There is a thirst you have felt, a thirst that water, no matter how pure, cannot quench. It is a silent restlessness, a subtle vibration deep within the soul, a profound yearning not for something physical, but for a kind of dissolution. It's the pain of feeling like an outsider in this world, as if you were born in the wrong era or into a reality that doesn't comprehend your soul. It is a will, almost a need, to, if only for an instant, melt the hard edges of the self that the world has forced you to build. The self that has a name, a profession, responsibilities. You long to touch something greater, something you feel you have lost, or perhaps something that was taken from you. This feeling, this pain of not belonging in a world that seems increasingly loud, fast, and shallow. This is not your flaw. It is not a sign of weakness or maladjustment. It is an echo. Something in you already knows this. It is the memory of a time when humanity knew the sacred ritual, a time when the connection to the divine was a lived experience and not just a belief. The modern world bombards us with noise, the incessant glow of screens, the pressure for a productivity that never ceases, the demand that we always be connected, always available. Our energy is constantly pulled outward, fragmented into 1,000 notifications. And amidst this cacophony, the soul, in its innate wisdom, yearns for silence. It yearns for presence. And when it cannot find a sacred path to this depth, it seeks the profane path. The search for an altered state, then, can be seen as an act of rebellion, a form of sacred anarchy. It is your soul saying, "Enough." It is your soul trying to force an emergency stop, a shutdown of a system that sickens the spirit. It is not a search for self-destruction, as so many judge it to be. It is a desperate and mapless attempt at spiritual self-preservation. It is your spirit trying to reconnect with its origin. Our culture looks at this yearning and quickly labels it as escapism. But the ancient souls, the initiates of early times, saw it differently. They knew that certain doors of perception were made to be opened. They understood that these substances were not enemies, but powerful keys. Keys that demanded immense respect, a precise ritual, and above all, a pure intention. The ritual was not about forgetting who they were. It was about remembering who they were before the world told them otherwise. It was a technology to navigate consciousness, not to flee from it. Real power is remembering who you were before the forgetting. The great explorer of the human soul, Carl Jung, saw this with stunning clarity. He did not see a moral defect in the abyss of addiction. He saw a spiritual search gone astray, a thirst for union with the divine that, for lack of a sacred vessel, spills onto the floor of despair. Reflect on that for a moment. The same impulse that drives someone to the bottom of a bottle is the same impulse that drives a monk to the top of a mountain, the desire to transcend the limited self. The search is real. Your thirst is real. What has been corrupted is the method. Something inside you is not looking for numbness, but for reunion. And it is this nobility in the initial impulse that we must honor to understand the rest of the journey. And it is here that the great and painful paradox of our era is revealed. Why does the modern use of these substances almost always become a prison for consciousness, an invisible cycle, while ancient rituals were seen as portals to liberation? The answer is painfully simple. You weren't born disconnected. You were taught to forget. Now a silent question emerges, a question you may have already asked yourself in your darkest nights. What if everything they told you about yourself is incomplete? What did the ancients know about the spirits contained in nature that we have been forced to bury under the weight of fear and judgment? There is a pain that hangs in the air of our world. It is a silent hum of anxiety, the grey weight of existential monotony, that somber hunger for something that gives meaning, for something that makes us feel truly alive. It's the exhaustion from seeking truths in religions, therapies, science, and still feeling that something essential is missing. You know this feeling intimately, especially if you have always felt a little different, more sensitive, more intense. The pain of seeing and feeling things that others don't seem to notice can be overwhelming, a solitary burden. It is the chronic pain of metaphysical loneliness. Why do I feel so much, see so much, and no one else seems to notice? But what if this pain is not just yours? What if it is an inherited pain, an ancestral trauma, the silent grief of generations upon generations who were systematically disconnected from the sacred, from the earth, from their rites of passage? Think of your grandparents, your great-grandparents. Think of the wars they lived through, the poverty, the loss of their cultures. Think of the suppression of their native spirituality. You may be carrying in your DNA not just your own pain, but the unhealed pain of an entire lineage that forgot how to connect. You carry memories that the world has tried to erase. Allow yourself for a moment, without judgment, to feel where this pain lives in your body. Take a deep breath and just observe. Perhaps it is a tightness in your chest, a sense of weight on your shoulders. Perhaps it is a lump in your throat, an emptiness in your stomach. Do not try to fix it. Do not try to push it away. Just acknowledge its presence as one acknowledges an old friend who has come to visit. Give it space. The pain is not an enemy. It is the part of you that still remembers. It is from this silent wound, from this place that yearns for healing, that the search for relief is born. A legitimate search, a deeply human search. When you find this relief in a substance, a deception occurs in your brain. That dopamine spike mimics enlightenment. It is like taking out a high-interest loan on your future happiness. You get a moment of euphoria today, but tomorrow, your baseline level of well-being will be a little lower, and the debt a little larger. True spiritual work is more like the sunrise, slow, gradual, but constant and true. The incessant search for the chemical firework drains in the long run the ocean of your own vitality, leaving the shore of your soul increasingly dry and empty when the tide goes out. This search for relief is also linked to the fear of looking within, the fear of facing the silent abyss that exists in each of us. It is in this silence that our purest truth resides, but it is also where our shadows dance. And often it seems much safer to anesthetize the call that comes from that place than to find the courage to answer it. That is why the cycle repeats. The soul longs to dive into the ocean of consciousness, but fear makes us choose to drown the gatekeeper instead of asking for passage. However, the ancients knew of this duality. Think of the mythology of Dionysus, born twice, once from a mortal mother, and once from the thigh of Zeus. He personifies the union of the human and the divine. His rituals, the Bacchanalia, were ecstatic celebrations where social barriers and the individual ego were dissolved in dance and wine, allowing for a direct contact with the divine. It was the sacred madness, but the same energy, without the structure of the ritual, became destructive madness, the chaos that tore apart and consumed. He teaches us that the same door that leads to heaven leads to hell. The direction is determined by the consciousness with which one turns the key. The memory still exists, recorded in the Akasha, the memory of the forgotten rites, the Soma of the Vedas, the Kaikion of the Greeks, the sacred mushrooms of the peoples of the Americas. In all these traditions, the pattern is the same. The substance was never the main focus. It was a sacrament, a tool within a much larger and more complex process. The focus was on the ritualistic vessel, the preparation, the intention. Let's tell a story. Imagine a young woman in Athens over 2,000 years ago. Let's call her Lyra. Lyra carries a weight in her heart, the pain of losing her mother. The world seems grey and meaningless. She hears of the Eleusinian mysteries, a secret ritual that promises a vision into the nature of life and death. She decides to make the journey. It is not a weekend trip to have an experience. It is the culmination of a full year of preparation. Lyra begins with days of purification, fasting, and abstaining from certain foods. She joins a procession and walks for days from Athens to Eleusis. Each step is a meditation, a symbolic act of leaving the profane world behind, her identity, her pain. Upon arriving, she participates in a ritual bath in the sea, washing not only her body, but symbolically surrendering her grief to the waters. She takes a vow of silence that lasts for days, to quiet the chattering mind and open the spirit to hear what is subtle. Finally, the night comes. Lyra enters the Telesterion, the dark temple, along with other initiates. The air is thick with incense and expectation. The priest speaks of the cycles of nature, of Persephone and Demeter, of the seed that must die so that life can be reborn. Then, in silence, she receives a small cup containing the Kaikion. She drinks. What Lyra sees are not chaotic hallucinations. She has a vision. She does not see her mother physically, but she feels her presence in an overwhelming way, like a warmth that fills her. She understands, on a level that transcends words, that her mother's consciousness was not extinguished, but merely changed form, like water becoming vapor. She sees the cycle of life, death, and rebirth not as a theory, but as a living, pulsating truth. She no longer feels fear. She feels peace. Lyra does not leave in a daze. She leaves an initiate, transformed. The pain of her loss still exists, but it is now held within a greater understanding. The ritualistic vessel, the preparation, the intention, the myth, the community, allowed the chemical key to open a door to wisdom and not to chaos. Now compare that to modern use. The set is often anxiety, boredom, pain. The setting is a noisy bar, a chaotic party, the loneliness of a room lit by a cell phone screen. The substance is the same key, but the door it opens leads to a completely different place. The spiritual science of the ancients was a science of preparing the vessel. They knew that without preparing the soil, the seed of divine vision could not only fail to flourish, but could rot and poison the ground. Modern abuse is a tragic distortion of this science. It is the same action of opening a door, but done without preparation. It is like a key used by a thief, not an initiate. The result is not the activation of the pineal, but its suppression. And it is from this ancient knowledge that an alert echoes. To try to use these powerful keys today, without a symbolic structure, is to invite confusion. It is like opening a door in the middle of a storm. Without the ritual, the soul can feel fragmented instead of whole. What happens on a chemical level is a hijacking. Your reward system is deceived. The brain, in its simplicity, confuses the chemical echo with spiritual fulfillment, and it begins to ask for more, creating a cycle where you chase the memory of an experience that was never truly yours. But the issue is much deeper. It touches upon the law of vibration, one of the 7 Hermetic principles. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. Your state of being is a frequency. Joy has a high frequency, fear a low frequency. The true spiritual work is the conscious and disciplined act of learning to modulate and elevate your own frequency. Low-frequency substances do the opposite. They corrupt your subtle field. Imagine your energetic field as a crystal-clear lake. Every use of a low-frequency substance is like throwing a mud rock into that lake. The water becomes murky. The light cannot penetrate. The fish, which are your intuitions and gifts, begin to die from lack of oxygen. And in this low vibrational state, your field becomes permeable. You're not going crazy. You're just remembering a sensitivity that was put to sleep. This permeability opens energetic doors that should remain closed, making you vulnerable to parasitic thought forms, to the energy of despair from the collective unconscious. And here is the double bind, the energetic feedback loop that silently tightens. The substance lowers your vibration. The low vibration makes you feel bad, anxious, depressed. To alleviate this discomfort, you seek the substance again, and the cycle deepens, digging a deeper and deeper well. The altered state you seek to free yourself from your shadow, when reached without an anchor, ends up amplifying that very same shadow. The anxiety you tried to silence screams louder. The sadness you tried to drown emerges as a flood. The person who drinks to forget loneliness finds themselves immersed in a cosmic loneliness, because the substance did not remove the feeling. It just dissolved the defenses that kept it in check. The escape becomes the wall of your prison. You run, but you discover that you are running in circles inside the same cell. The alternative to this cycle is the cultivation of coherence. Heart coherence, for example, is a spiritual practice disguised as science. By breathing rhythmically and focusing your attention on your heart, cultivating a feeling of gratitude or compassion, you create a powerful, stable, and high-frequency electromagnetic field. A high-vibration field that by its very nature repels energetic interference and calms the mind. It is the discovery that your own heart can generate a more powerful and sustainable state of ecstasy than any external chemistry. It is the reversal of perspective. You stop looking for the key and start cultivating the state that makes you the key itself. There was a great and silent upheaval in our spiritual history. The early religious councils, in order to centralize power, suppressed the Gnostic traditions that promoted a direct experience with the divine. They banned the sacraments of the earth, the sacred plants. But the persecution was even more specific and brutal. Let's tell another story. Imagine a woman named Ilara in a village in Europe around the year 1600. She does not consider herself a witch. She is a wise woman. She knows the forest like the palm of her hand. She knows which tree bark relieves a fever, which root soothes a stomach ache, and which flower, prepared in a certain way, can help a troubled soul find peace in their dreams. The women of the village seek her out to help with their births. The men respect her for her practical knowledge. Her spirituality is not in a book or a stone building, but in the web of life around her. One day the inquisitors arrive in the village. They speak of a distant and jealous god, of a devil that hides everywhere, especially in the wisdom of women and the power of nature. They see Ilara's independence, her direct connection with the forces of life, not as a gift, but as a threat. Her cures are called witchcraft. Her prayers to the moon are called heresy. The plants she uses are labeled as tools of the devil. Ilara is arrested, tortured, and finally burned at the stake. Her crime, and that of tens of thousands like her, was not devil worship. Their crime was power. The power to heal, the power to have visions, the power of a spirituality that did not need a male intermediary at the altar. The demonization of sacred plants was also the demonization of the archetype of the wise woman, the priestess, the divine feminine that heals and has a direct and intuitive connection with nature. It was a war against intuition. But true knowledge is never destroyed. It just goes into hiding. Away from the sight of power, lineages of hermeticists and alchemists operated in the shadows. The alchemists were not just seeking to turn lead into physical gold. That was a symbolic language, a code to mislead the uninitiated. Their true search, the great work, was the transmutation of the human soul, the lead of ignorance, fear, and suffering into the gold of enlightened consciousness and connection with the divine. And they used their knowledge of nature, of plants and minerals, as part of this initiatory process. Notice how the pattern of suppression repeats itself. When colonial powers sought to subjugate the native peoples of Africa, Australia, and the Americas, they did not limit themselves to taking their lands. They made a systematic effort to eradicate their rituals. Missionaries were sent to demonize their practices, to break their connection with the land and with their ancestors. They knew instinctively that to break the spiritual backbone of a people, you must first cut their direct connection to the spirit world. It was necessary to create a dependency on the new religious authority for any spiritual guidance. And this brings us to an uncomfortable question, a question that needs to be asked in the silence of your own heart. Who really benefits from a population that remains perpetually numb, distracted, and anxious, but that never ever truly awakens to its innate power? Who benefits when people seek relief in a bottle, but are afraid to seek the truth within themselves? The question is not to be answered with anger, but with a calm and profound clarity, a clarity that brings responsibility. In the exact center of your brain, there is the pineal gland, a biological portal to the subtle dimensions. The chronic use of suppressive substances, like alcohol, initiates a process of calcification. It is as if, grain by grain, a hard shell forms around this delicate crystal, blocking its intuitive clarity. Your third eye was not made to see the world, but to see through it, and it cannot see through a wall. The paradox is that your own body produces the spirit molecule, DMT. It is your endogenous key, your divine inheritance. But by seeking the experience outside, our ability to generate it within falls asleep. The sober vision, the clarity that comes from an active and decalcified pineal gland, is subtle but profound. It is the intuition that becomes sharper, almost like a calm voice in your mind, a knowing that needs no proof. It is the synchronicities that become more frequent and obvious, showing you that the universe is in dialogue with you. It is the dreams that become more vivid and meaningful, true lessons from your soul during the night. It is the desire to awaken dormant gifts becoming a reality. Modern microvices go beyond alcohol. The excess of caffeine, which creates an artificial and anxious state of alertness. Refined sugar, which inflames the body and mind. The fluoride in the water, which has a chemical affinity with the pineal gland, contributing to its calcification. And perhaps most insidious of all, the information overload and the blue light from screens at night, which completely deregulate our circadian rhythms and the production of melatonin, the hormone that is a chemical precursor to our states of dream and vision. But this is not a final sentence. It is a call to consciousness. There is a way back. Let's do a practice of consciousness activation together. Wherever you are, find a comfortable position. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath in through your nose, filling your lungs completely, and release the air through your mouth with a sigh. Once more, breathe in deeply and let go. Now, bring your attention to the center of your head, a point in the middle of your brain, aligned with the space between your eyebrows. Don't force it, just gently bring your awareness there. Imagine in that spot a small sphere of violet light, the size of a pearl, a soft, pulsating light. Feel the subtle vibration of this light. This is the representation of your inner temple, your third eye. Now imagine a stream of crystalline water or of golden liquid light coming from the top of your head and descending gently, entering your brain and touching this violet sphere. See this liquid light washing the sphere, washing away any hardness, any obscurity, any calcification. See this light gently dissolving the barriers, like the sun melting ice. Remain with this image for a few moments, the golden light cleaning, purifying, activating your violet sphere. Feel your inner crystal becoming clean, polished, translucent, vibrant. Breathe into this feeling of clarity and purity, and know that you can return to this place, to this inner ritual, whenever you need to. Simple practices like getting a little sun in the morning, with your eyes closed facing the sky, and ensuring total darkness at night to sleep, are powerful and practical ways to honor and care for your inner portal. This is the practical turning point, the moment when the journey turns inward and you begin to reclaim your power. It is the moment to remember the technologies of the soul, the practices that allow you to achieve transcendence without chemical crutches. It is the moment of alignment. Your breath is the true psychoactive. It is a vehicle for life force, for prana. Practices like holotropic breathwork are not just exercises, they are rituals. They are ways of consciously altering your own body chemistry, allowing you to access non-ordinary states of consciousness with total clarity. You might feel a tingling in your body. You might feel the urge to laugh or cry for no apparent reason. This is good. It is stagnant energy moving. It is life flowing again through channels that were blocked. It is your sensitivity being validated as a power, not a fragility. Your body keeps the score. Every tension in your neck, every ache in your back, every butterfly in your stomach. All of this is information. Ecstatic dance, the sound of a drum, the vibration of your own voice in a chant. These are living technologies to release this energy. Tremoring, the act of shaking the body, is one of the most primitive and powerful ways to release trauma. Animals in nature do this instinctively after a scare. We have been taught to suppress this wisdom, to keep our composure. Allowing your body to move freely, without judgment, as if no one were watching, is a form of prayer. It is your body speaking its truth. Fasting, when done as a ritual, also becomes a portal. But today, we can also think of the digital fast. 1 day a week without screens. A news fast. A dopamine fast, avoiding instant gratifications like social media and processed food. When you stop consuming the noise of the external world, your inner world speaks louder. You begin to hear your own intuition again. You begin to feel your own rhythm. The modern world has taught us to outsource our transcendence. The sacred path, however, invites you to create your own vessel, to build your own temple made of practice, of silence, and of presence. It is the invitation for you to become the alchemist of your own experience, the master of your own inner state, to create conscious and sacred rituals, to navigate your days with presence and meaning. And here, we anchor our entire journey in the highest wisdom, in the teachings of Hermes Trismegistus. As above, so below. As below, so above. Your inner chemical environment, what happens in your body, is a direct reflection of your spiritual field. They are not separate. They are a mirror to one another. If your spirit is at peace, your body chemistry reflects that peace. If your spirit is in turmoil, your chemistry reflects that turmoil. The law of vibration also teaches us that every choice, every substance, every thought either refines and elevates your frequency or corrupts and lowers it. You feel this. In the silence of your being, you have always known this. You know which foods, which people, which places elevate your energy, and you know which ones drain it. The wisdom is already in you. Not everyone will understand, but you do. You feel it. And this is the lost truth, the truth that rests beneath the layers of doubt. Intoxication was once a sacred tool. But in the hands of a world that has forgotten the sacred, it has become a trap. The power, however, was never in the substance. The power always was and always will be in the consciousness of the one who uses it. The poison is not just in the dose, it is in the absence of a sacred intention. And it is the intention, the consciousness, and the ritual that transform the poison into medicine. And perhaps the deepest and most liberating truth is this. For many sensitive souls in this world, the journey through addiction, abuse, or darkness was not a detour from the spiritual path. It was the path. It was the via negativa, the descent into the underworld, the only way to shatter an ego that no longer served. It was in this darkness that you were forced to develop a strength, a resilience, and a compassion that you would have never found if you had remained only in the light. Your pain was not a mistake. It was your initiation. Your scars are the map of your soul. This isn't fantasy. It's the memory beneath your doubt. The final call, then, is for you to become a modern alchemist. For you to look at the lead of your painful experiences, not with shame, but with reverence. And for you to begin the conscious work of transmuting that lead into the gold of wisdom, of compassion, and eventually of service to others who are still lost in the darkness. You weren't born disconnected. You were taught to forget. It is time to remember. If this journey has resonated in your spirit, leave a silent acknowledgement in the comments. A statement not for the world, but for your own soul. To continue on this journey of remembrance and awakening, we invite you to subscribe to the channel and to like this video. And remember, it's not about what you want, but about who you are.